excited to do this video on resolution ideas for Black, Indigenous, and other people of color for 2022 in order to what? In order to receive racial healing, okay? I'm so excited. If you have not already, definitely be sure to check out the different videos that I've already posted around if you like signs on whether to spot like whether or not you or another person is dealing with and suffering from racial trauma. Honestly, we all are. I will put that in the description box just so that folks kind of have various resources. So as folks already know, if you are a Black, Indigenous, or other person of color, guess what? It's not whether or not you are dealing with racial trauma, it is how you are dealing with racial trauma, because guess what? We are all confronted with that as a result of us not yet fully addressing and ending systemic racism. So as we are looking to really kind of be the better versions of ourselves for 2022, I thought, hey, let's go ahead and do a video to help us do that, right? What are resolutions that we can commit to for this next year that will strengthen us and that will really lead to racial healing in our life? The first thing is to commit to writing down all the ways that you have experienced racial trauma in 2021. So I know that it might seem counterintuitive to start off a 2022 resolution list by looking at 2021, but guess what? I think it's so important that we create this space for us to actually think about all the ways that we've been traumatized in 2021 so that we can eventually receive healing. One of the things that I'm reminded of that God's been working with me on is taking time to grieve. Grief is so important. So if we skip right into what we're gonna commit to change, to grow, to all those different things, without first addressing the grief piece, then we are not actually doing ourselves any good. So that's why it's important for your first resolution in 2022 is to write down and spend time reflecting on all the ways that you, your family, your racial community, any of that has and continues to experience racial trauma. In 2021, it doesn't only have to be limited to 2021, it also can be way before then, right? But just kind of think through that, list all of that out. That brings me to my second point. Commit to making time to grieve and asking God to help you. So I was reminded by a spiritual mom that I have, just again, the importance of grieving, but it's okay if you don't know how to grieve. There was a situation that I was dealing with that I literally just went to God during my prayer time and I was like, Lord, I don't know how to grieve on this, but I know I need to. And then the Holy Spirit just completely ministered and allowed me to just kind of break down and cry, and I didn't even have words, but it was kind of like this inner aching that was taking place. I encourage you, if you don't know the stages of grief, if you don't know how to grieve, just ask God, Lord, I don't know how to grieve. Help me grieve on this, right? That is gonna be important. And then after you do that, then get to the third one, which is, Lord, help me, help heal me in these areas. And start to declare that, make that part of your daily prayer life, right? Is to be like, and to claim, again, this is also from a spiritual mom of mine. She's like, listen, claim what you are, claim what God says you are. Those are the I ams, right? So I am, whatever that is, right? So in the case of Black, Indigenous, and other people of color who we're experiencing racial trauma on that daily, then being like, I am strong, I am beautifully and wonderfully made, I am courageous, I am a child of God, I am a kingdom bearer of Christ, I am joyful, words of the enemy do not pierce my soul. Whatever the case is, right? Just write down those affirmations, those I am statements, and be sure to declare life over yourself during your prayer time. And that's what you commit to. You commit to taking it, to writing it down, right? Writing all the ways you've been traumatized down. The second is, guess what? Commit to asking God to help you grieve and making time to grieve over the hurt and the pain that you've gone through, right? The third is to make time in your daily prayer life with God to work towards healing, right? Asking God for healing, but then guess what? You also start to work towards healing when you affirm yourself and speak life over yourself like I just recommended. So making sure that those are the first three things that you do are so critically important, because that sets the foundation for your freedom, right? Where you can then get into some of the juicy stuff for 2022. I'm so excited to get into those, okay? Now, since we've gone through the three foundational pieces, be sure to do that, y'all. Then let's get into some of the things that we can commit to thereafter. Commit to looking for resources specific to the pain and trauma that you have experienced, that area of pain, right? It could be maybe you have experienced that level of pain at work specifically. Guess what? On this YouTube channel, it provides so many different resources for workplace trauma, right? So maybe it's that you look specifically for workplace trauma resources and stuff like that. Maybe it was in your family, right? Maybe you are experiencing it with your family, whatever the case is. Maybe you look up resources for that. Maybe it is maybe internalized racial trauma that you're having a hard time embracing and loving yourself as someone who's uniquely and wonderfully made by God, right? Again, I have some videos on that. Maybe you just kind of look for things like that that will help build your confidence. There's so many other ways that we can experience racial trauma, but whatever the ways are that you have experienced, one of your resolutions should be to commit to finding resources specific to that. Another thing I want to encourage you to commit to is, guess what? Finding people who have experienced similar things in the similar areas. Some of these people might be people you already have relationships with. Other folks might just be new folks who you don't have a relationship with, but that can help you overcome and address and heal from some of those areas that you've been harmed in. Another thing is to commit to writing down all of the boundaries that are within your control to make for yourself to protect your heart, right? And guard your mind, okay? So for me, some of those boundaries is how often I watch the news, okay, y'all? As in the line of work that I do, I'm focused on racism every single day. I don't have time for the news a lot of the time, just because it's gonna pierce my heart in ways that just like, can't have it today, okay? So I have to be very, very intentional about what I allow in kind of my eyesight to kind of, go into what I'm essentially ingesting, right? Another thing is to have boundaries over the conversations that I have with people. Some people, because I am a racial justice expert, they're like, oh, Marisa, like, let me pick your brain about that. I'm like, I love you, boo, but can't do that today. I actually really need to guard my heart right now, and God's working with me on some things. So it's just like, I would just encourage you to kind of like think about what those boundaries are for you. Maybe you are okay. Like for my husband, he can watch the news every single day, but maybe it's that he's being intentional about what type of news he ingests, maybe the amount of time that he pays attention to certain things that might be triggering, all of that case, all of those things. So again, just think about what boundaries, and that can be your a New Year's resolution, is to think about, okay, what are the boundaries that I'm intentionally creating for myself? And again, I would just encourage you to think about like how that corresponds to the first thing that we committed to, which is essentially writing down all the ways that we've been harmed. Maybe you think about, okay, well, what are ways that like I can be intentional, right? Like if I'm noticing that I receive most of my harm at work, then maybe it's that I'm not opening up to my coworkers as much, right? Maybe it's that I'm not going to that gathering, right? Because I just kind of need to like have me time with God, right? Or whatever the case is. So just kind of figure out what that looks like for you and write down and commit to and enforce and protect all of those boundaries. Another thing is therapy, y'all. Guess what? That is so important. I feel like it's very, very helpful to be able to kind of deconstruct why we're feeling certain ways, what things are triggering and stuff like that. Guess what? That is important. I would definitely recommend having a therapy who preferably is someone who is conscious, right, is committed to racial justice, and preferably someone within your racial group who tends to understand some of the nuances of what you experience as a group of color. And if not, I know for me, like, my preference is certainly to have Black women, and if not, then my second preference would be to have women of color, right? So just kind of thinking about what your preferences are so that you can actually feel like you're in a safe space. And last but not least, making your last resolution a commitment to pray for those who have harmed you and for those who will continue to harm you in 2022. I know that that sounds counterintuitive, y'all, but something that God's really been revealing to me is just the importance of not allowing bitterness, the seeds of bitterness, to plant itself in our hearts, because then it stifles our growth spiritually, but then it also just is a way that the enemy continues to harden our hearts. And guess what? With the hardened hearts, it's harder for us to grow. It's harder for us to be more intimate with God and God's children, all these different things. It robs us of our joy. We don't want to be robbed from our joy, okay? And guess what? When our joy is robbed, then our peace is robbed. And when our peace is disturbed, then our mind tends to get disturbed, and all these different things. And it all starts with bitterness taking root. So something that God's been working with me on, that God has worked with me on in the past and is continuing to work with me on in this season, is to pray for the people who are offending you. They pray for the people who are harming you. And it doesn't mean that they get a pass. That does not mean that they get a pass. But what it does is it allows for the kingdom of God to be present in that situation, and for heaven's armies to come out and fight on your behalf. It also allows you to hopefully start to see the humanity of the person who has harmed you. Again, not to excuse their actions, right? But to see the spirit behind what is going on, as well as soften your heart. Okay, that is one of the biggest things I can say, is to soften your heart, because you don't want to be harmed by someone else's sin. That's just what it boils down to. And I have noticed that praying for them actually results in freedom. And I'm not gonna say it's easy, right? I'm not gonna say it's easy. Maybe the first day is like a quick 10-second prayer, right? And the second day you upgrade to like 30 seconds. And the third day you upgrade to a minute, and so on and so forth. Maybe it's baby steps, okay? But I just want to encourage you to do that, because from personal experience, I have realized just the level of freedom that I have been able to experience when I am no longer in bondage to bitterness, okay? So I hope that that was helpful. Racial trauma is such an important topic to talk about. I don't think that we talk about it enough when it comes to our quest to address racism. But I just want to encourage you, as Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, guess what? We got this. We got this, we got this, we got this. And we have to support each other, okay? This is something that we're all going through. And it looks differently for everyone. But my prayer is that you would use these resolutions and that they would fortify your spirit for 2022 as you continue on your trajectory towards growth, towards healing, and towards restoration, okay? Share this video wide, okay, y'all? God knows we need it. Until next time.